Hello, and welcome to another episode of the B2B Leadership Podcast. My name is Nils Vinje, and today my guest is Craig Blum. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Craig. Looking forward to digging into all things leadership with you, but first, would love for you to share with me and our audience the role that you're in today and the company that you work for.
With pleasure. So I am the VP of Customer Success at a company called Midaxo. We do M&A software. So companies who are in the M&A space can use our software to sort of track all the deals that they've got going. You know, some companies have 10, 20 deals happening at any given time, and we help them to keep track of all that, sort of like a CRM. And then once a deal becomes, real, like they're going to actually move forward with taking some action, then we help them track their diligence phases, which allows them to upload all the documents that need to come in and manage all the interviews and the tasks that need to happen during that very important diligence phase. And then we also allow them to track after diligence if the deal gets closed, the sort of post-merger integration phases, which is really important. I don't know if you've ever been part of a merger, which I have.
Unfortunately, yes.
If you don't plan it.
I don't think they used your software at the time because it didn't go very well.
Same. So, I went from a company that had been very in bad shape with that merger to this company. And I realized looking back, once I started getting into the software, saying to myself, wow, had we had this thing, 6 months, a year ago, things might be different. But we're very excited. We are about to release sort of version 2 of the platform later this month. So, it's a challenging time to both re-platform a software system that's been in play for almost a decade, because we've got dozens and hundreds of customers who have been used to what they're used to, and now they're going to have to move. And then we're also going to have to, change all of our marketing and get used to this new platform. So we're really excited. I'm very bullish on the next year or so at Midaxo. It's really exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting. I mean, thinking about just the focus area, right? You said it kind of functioned like a CRM, but then you're only dealing with M&A. And that is such a narrow field, but there are so many pieces to that puzzle. It's kind of mind-blowing thinking about all of them. And it's wonderful to hear that there are solutions. I didn't even know that it existed, highly targeted towards people who do lots of M&A deals, and that's wonderful. What would you say is the most interesting thing on the post-diligence side that you mentioned that you came from a previous company where you wish that would have been in place, but what was an example of something that, had it been in place, could have prevented and could have had just a different outlook?
Well, I think we could probably make a 100-part podcast just about that. But
fair enough.
The first thing that comes to mind, from my perspective, is tooling, right? We didn't just merge 2 companies together. We merged 5, right? And so there was not 1 instance of Salesforce, not 2 instances of Salesforce, not 3, but 5 instances of Salesforce that we had to merge together into one big thing. And I didn't personally have, I wasn't, clicking the buttons and making the changes, but you can imagine, 5 different companies, they've all got their own process, they're all different methods, they're all the same, sort of general ideas, but everyone does it a little differently, and then there's different people involved, and there's different fields and different, so it was a nightmare, quite frankly, to be sort of a user of that, right? Like I needed to be there. I need to be finding a contract that okay, company A has a contract with these guys, but company B has another contract with these guys that isn't due for another 6 weeks. It's just, there was so much confusion and people just they had contracts on their hard drives. They had contracts inside Box. They had contracts everywhere else. And so it was an absolute nightmare. And you can imagine just for 2 companies, but we did it with 5.
That's amazing.
So that was, for me, the biggest challenge. It was the different tools, and that's just Salesforce, right? Then we had one company had, client success software. Another company had Gainsight. And so which one of those do you move forward with? And it's just all of those decisions that you don't think about. Like the private equity firms who are funding all this stuff, they don't think about that. They just say, go, and then in a year, give me my money back, right? The people who actually have to do the work, that's not easy. And there are long nights. So that was the biggest challenge. And I think had we planned it and had the checklists of things, here's the next order of things, it would have been much, much smoother. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you ended up joining a firm who is enabling the prevention of that for others in the future. So super cool stuff.
Getting me that job, I can be honest.
Hey, that sometimes is the best way, right? I've had I know many people who have become employees of the vendors and partners and customers that they were a customer to, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful because one, everybody wants a little bit of experience, and you coming into this organization having had that firsthand experience means a lot. Plus, your customer success background and expertise means a lot. So that's huge. Okay, so let's rewind the clock a little bit and tell us about how you got into your first leadership position.
Sure. Yeah. So I started out of college. I was a software engineer. I was, head down writing code all day long for various different startups, and I did that for 10 or 12 years. And then I just realized I didn't want to be a software engineer anymore. I didn't want to have to relearn that same, hey, here's a for loop, but different syntax, and and there's much more to it than that. No offense to all you software engineers out there, I just didn't want to do that my whole life. And I realized that I kind of had, I had some interpersonal skills that I really wasn't using because I was writing code all day long, and I wanted to try and get in front of customers and talk to them. And so I asked that company I was at the time to sort of let me be sort of a client services guy. So I was technical, but then talking to customers. And so that sort of morphed into, while I was there, I got an MBA, and then ended up at a company very small company, had four or five employees at the time and half a dozen customers that needed somebody to come help with the code, but also be, in front of the customer base. And so they hired me to be sort of this manager of, customer client services, some title like that, like from 15 years ago. And it just grew from there, right? We started with those 6 customers, and then we grew. It was 4 or 5 years later that we hit the 100 customer mark, and that I needed to start hiring a team and really start putting process around what we were doing. And so it just sort of evolved and became what now we know as customer success. We didn't call it that at the time, but in about 2014, 2015, we had 250 customers. We had a couple of, we called them curation coaches. It was a company called Curata. We called them curation coaches, and we didn't, and then we finally realized, wait a minute, we're doing customer success here. Let's change everything, call it customer success, make them CSMs, and really standardize the process. And then I had been doing it the longest, I guess. I, had the most experience. So that's how I sort of, it was a startup, right? And so, Craig's that guy, right? And so
Craig's
that's
that guy.
what it was, right? And then a couple more years pass, and we keep growing, and it's 350 customers, and the team's now 5 or 6 CSMs and a support person, and they're all looking to me to give them what the best practices are, how we're doing, are we? So I was the sort of manager of that team, and it was at that point that I had like the VP title, but I was managing 5 people, and it was a company of 50. So, is that VP? I guess it was, but that was the first leadership role, and it's been a fun ride since then. Let's put it that way.
That's fascinating. All right, I want to pick apart a couple of those things along that timeline. When you said you made the decision that you didn't want to be in the software engineering field anymore, was there a particular moment that you realized like, this isn't really fulfilling me anymore, or I've hit the end of my limit here in this particular capacity? What was that moment that said, I got to make a big shift? Because that's a pretty big shift getting out of it from just writing code to then wanting to be customer facing.
Yeah. There is a very specific moment. It was a year or two before the transition started to really get into my brain, but I realized, I was in a meeting with a lifetime software engineer guy. He was a few years older than me at the time. I was in my late 20s, and he was probably in his mid to late 50s, sort of at the end of his career. And he had done all of that. And he was just, and no offense to the guy, maybe it was just him, but he was just a curmudgeon, He was a bitter old man that just hated his job, but he knew he needed to keep it, and he wanted to keep, he didn't care.
Yeah.
He just knew that he needed a job, and he had these skills, and he was going to go do them every day, right? Yep. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I'm not going to be that guy. I don't want to be this just sad guy that never and I don't know if he did that, right? I'm not judging him personally. I'm just saying that if I was, 35 years later and looked back and said, man, I didn't try to go and do something that was more fulfilling to me, because I was decent at writing code. It paid the bills. But I wasn't ever going to be like a software architect. Like that path that's not where I was, right? Like I went to college and I was a hybrid business / coding. So I took business classes, but I took a lot of programming classes too. And I chose the programming path out of college, and I said, maybe that's not exactly where I want to go, right? But so it's been important for me to stay in software. I've never left the software world. Yeah. So that to me helps me as a sort of customer success person, because I can translate nerd world into customer world and vice versa.
Yep.
So that's, I think, been helpful for me over the last 10 or 15 years.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, that was the moment. I just said, I'm not going to be that guy, So I did everything I could, I guess, to not be that guy.
That's fascinating. And I love that, there was a pivotal moment, and so many times there is. And when you're ready for it and when you're aware of it, it has a completely different impact. Sometimes these moments occur and you're oblivious to it. But you saw that at that point in time, and it changed the trajectory of the rest of your career, which is awesome, because then you got into something that you were going to be engaged with and did want to do for a very long time. So that's absolutely wonderful. And you and I share an awful lot of very similar trajectory and path and timing and CS and all that good stuff. So it's fun to hear your story too and line it up with some of the experiences I had, because I was dabbled very lightly, and probably even in air quotes, with being a software engineer, and I lasted for about 6 months before I realized I have no business here. I'm definitely not cut out to do this work. And I always sought out the combination, right? This, like you said, like having business skills but also having technical skills. And it wasn't until the field of customer success actually existed and I got into that role where it was like, oh, this makes sense. Bringing these worlds together is really important. There's a lot of value here. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's do more of this. So awesome to know your background, and we're cutting from the same cloth. Let's talk about navigating that team building situation. So you got into this company very early. You were the first hire on this client services team. And then slowly and steadily over several years, the company grew, the customer base grew, and your team grew. So you went from, not having been in a people leadership position before to now, many years later, having a VP title and having 5 or 6 people reporting to you. Tell us a little bit about how you navigated that transition from you being the only one to do the work at the company to then having a team of people who worked for you doing the work alongside you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges there was like letting go, right? Mm-hmm. Because for so long it was me. Like I was the only guy doing it. It was my process and I built it and this is how I'm going to do it and it works, right? Yeah. But I can't do it anymore. Like there's too much volume. There's too many customers. I can't, right? So we had to make hires, and finding the right people was a challenge for a while, right? Because we didn't know who we needed to hire. But then once we did, it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. You can hang back, just wait, and it took me a long time to like let go of that first sort of customer who isn't mine anymore. Like they belong to Derek over here, right? And so, and it was, once I did that, then it was like trying not to like be over Derek's shoulder all day long, right? And making sure that he wasn't just doing it his way and he was doing it my way. And so it was a challenge for me personally to like let that go. And then it was sort of learning how to work collaboratively with him and learning the things that he was doing that maybe were better than the way I was doing it, right? And accepting that, okay, we can do this better than the way I thought we were doing it prior to that. And, that's part of, in my mind, being a good leader is listening to the ideas that your team has and not throwing them away immediately just because you didn't have them, right? So it took probably 6 months, 8 months to really kind of come to the conclusion that was a good thing for me, right? Yeah. And then, as we grew, it was sort of like we're in this together, right? Like I'm not here to be someone's boss and to tell them what to do. I'm here to solve a problem that our company has, right? So that took a little time to kind of understand, and then we, the dynamic of a new person, and is this person the same as this guy who we hired, right? His skill set might be different. Maybe he's a little more junior, or maybe he's more senior and has, is better at the job than either one of us ever was, right? So getting that interpersonal dynamic down, right, for someone who'd never done it before, and who was literally just like, okay, trying to figure it out as he went along.
Yep.
That was the biggest challenge, I think. Obviously, the day-to-day stuff is what it is. Everyone's got their own stuff, but like it's the interpersonal stuff to me that's really kind of, if you find somebody you love, you got to try and clone that person, but you can't,
Yeah, as much as we would love to. So in that discovery process of learning, how to engage with these other people that you hired and how to work effectively with them, what were the, things that helped you the most? Were there, mentors and people that you modeled? Was it purely trial by fire? Like, was it just experimentation? How did you actually go about transitioning, from a tactical perspective, or really learning these things during that time, transition from IC to VP?
Yeah, it was a little bit tough because the company was young, right? None of us knew what we were doing, right? And the CEO was younger than I was, and he had never, he wasn't really, his background was straight out of grad school, started a company, right? So he didn't cut his chops, doing, IC work, right? He went from being a grad student to a CEO. So that was a challenge for me because it was, I was pushing him to do business stuff, and he was, it was it's an interesting dynamic, right? But so, personally, I have a couple of mentors who I leaned on very heavily during that time, especially. One of whom was the CEO of the company I was at when I made the transition from pure software engineer to sort of client success, type of work. Yeah. And he and I would probably get lunch with him once a quarter and just stay in touch and bounce ideas off of him. And he's a really smart guy. He's in venture capital now, and he just he lives one town over from me. So whenever I think of it and I need help, he's open to having lunch, and so we still keep in touch to this day. So I definitely leaned on his hands-off leadership style when he was the CEO, but also firm hands-off leadership style, if you know what I mean. So
tell me more about what does firm hands-off leadership style mean?
Well, okay, go get it done. Yeah. And, don't mess it up, but I trust you that you're going to go get it done. You know what I mean? So like, I'm not going to hover, and I'm not going to micromanage you. But if you don't get it done, the consequences are these, right? And I expect a lot of good things out of you, right? And so it was sort of that, like, I don't want to mess up because I like this guy and I don't want to screw up, that kind of thing.
I don't want to make them look bad.
Right, exactly. So that was an important company to me. Like, it was, and this might sound weird, but the people who own the New England Patriots, I live in the New England area, so the people who own the New England Patriots funded that company. And so this guy's boss was the owner of the Patriots. And so he would come in, we'd get to meet the guy, and it's like, wow, this is pretty cool. And I wanted that company to do as well as it possibly could because, it was cool to be associated with the Patriots and get the tickets and, be that kind of a, and we were doing cool, we're trying to solve a cool problem too. So that was also a cool thing. But to this day, I will lean on Mike Triano as a mentor and a guy who I look up to forever. So
that's awesome. And I mean, what a great level of responsibility, it has when there's something that you're part of that's much bigger than you, right? And you want to do nothing more than to not let it down, and you want to show up at the highest level. And whether that's just at the organization level or even the owners of the organization level, like the Patriots, that's really cool. And I think a really powerful piece for all of us leaders to remember is what's the bigger picture here, right? It's not just about getting this one thing done, but how do you create that environment like you just described, Craig, where it's like, I will stop at nothing to not make this person look bad. Right. Not that we have to do everything for everybody else, but it adds an awful lot of motivation, an awful lot of just drive to make sure that, we want to support them by doing an incredible job and they trust us in return. And that's a really good thing. So Craig, I know you went from VP to then took a step back to senior director and now are back at the VP level. So would you talk us through what that transition was like? Because there can be a lot of stigma around going from a VP level to then taking a step back and then, hopefully working your way back up. But what was the circumstances surrounding that transition from VP to go backwards to senior director?
Yeah. So it was a choice. I was at a company, like a very small firm, right? And I felt like I wasn't getting enough there, right? It wasn't, I had the VP title, but it wasn't like fulfilling my career the way I thought that title would, or, that sort of role would. And so, I had an opportunity to go to a bigger company that, I had never experienced before. It was a company that, was, 10x in size than the one that I was at. And, an order of magnitude revenue, much, much more, right? So a lot of resources, but a lot more different, personalities, and, the departments were siloed and, not like a startup, right? And it was an opportunity to sort of come in and like bring customer success to that company who they hadn't necessarily done it. They paid it lip service, but they wanted someone to come in and do it. And so it was great, and I thought it was a wonderful opportunity, and it just didn't work. So the management at that company and I just didn't get along. My ideas were not the ideas that they had, and it lasted a very short time. And it's one of those things where you recognize it and you pull the ripcord on it because it's not going to work. It's not safe, right? And so I struggled. I didn't have a job for a few months after that. And I was like, okay, where am I? What am I doing in my career? How am I taking this? I just gave up that VP job, and now here I am with nothing, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, I looked around, and I ended up taking a director level job as sort of a BDR manager, which is a new challenge, right? I'd never done that before, right? And so I was building a BDR team, figuring out the personalities of a BDR and what it takes to motivate those people, which is completely different than motivating a customer success manager, right?
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. And I learned a ton about sales and about hiring kids out of college and, those different personality types and what makes those people tick. But I didn't really want to be a BDR manager. Like I realized during that time, and that was 2018 timeframe, that I needed to get back to customer success, and I wanted to get back to the VP role in a customer success organization at a company that is growing, small but growing, right? Sort of kind of where we left off, and like I wanted to get back to that spot.
Yeah.
And so I ended up at a place called Zebia Labs, which is one of those 5 companies that got merged into that really big company, right? So it was working fine at Zebia. I loved it there. It was the exact spot that I wanted to be in, and director level job with a path. So it was really great. And then everything changed when when the private equity firm came in and said, we're taking these 5 companies and we're making one big one here, right? And, then everything was
out.
Yeah, exactly. So then it was, then it got to the place where it was another huge company where politics and silos and getting things done. And I'm not used to that. I'm the kind of guy that says a startup, you give me a task, I'm going to go get it done. And, I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And doing that at a company of the size of where I was at, it was like up and over and around and down and through and up and through. And, it was very difficult to get things done there. So, and this is me personally, right? So some people love that environment, right? Yeah. I'm just not that guy, right? So I spent a couple of years there, and then it was just, I found like Midaxo is that company, right? They're the place that I'm, at least in 2022, for those listening in, 3 or 4 years from now, in 2022, Midaxo is that place for me. It's the right size, it's the right revenue, and it's software, and it's exactly personally for me what I like. And I fit great. And so now it's been like, I made it very clear that you're going to hire me as a senior director. That's great. But I want to be the VP in a year. And 8 months later, here we are. And the promotion happened yesterday. So we're good.
4 months ahead of schedule. And it happened yesterday, right before the day of this recording, which is awesome. So a huge congratulations to you. And I know that's no easy, path going from, being VP and then joining a company, being a little bit shut down and having the, not being the environment that you expected, and then, taking a break forcefully, right? And then going to a whole different industry, the BDR side, and then working your way back up to VP, and then this merger, and then taking a step back, and then now you're back at VP. I mean, if you look at this, just the grand scheme, it's fascinating. And what do you think as you look back at that path, right, from a leadership perspective, what do you see as the through line that was consistent across all those experiences that you went through that got you back to this VP place that you're at Midaxo?
Get back up. It's
Get
like
back up.
stuff's going to happen, right? Bad stuff's going to happen, right? Stuff that's out of your control, stuff that you don't anticipate. And you have the choice. I tell my kids this all the time. You make choices in your life, right? So I made a choice to walk away from that in 2017 or whenever it was. Yep. And then the world happened, right? Like all kinds of different factors occurred. And a lot of it was just, unexpected setbacks that you got to deal with and you got to push through. And it was hard. I won't lie. There were times where I didn't want to get out of bed because it was like, this isn't fun. But you push through and you push through. Like, I tell my team, there's a bad renewal coming. These guys are a pain in the butt. They're going to be a real difficult, procurement process or whatever it is. So there's a bug that our product team can't fix, and so they're going to quit on us because they want that bug to be fixed. Whatever it is. Okay, well, how are we going to get through it? What's the plan? What's the path around this problem? What's the path through the problem? Whatever it might be, you got to get back up. So, that to me, that's like you said, the through line is, keep pushing, keep chopping wood, as they say, right?
Keep chopping wood, get back up. I love it. So maybe tell us a little bit more about that in between time, right? When it was really tough, when you may have not wanted to get out of bed, right? And the, the choice that you made to do it. Like if you were, sitting down with somebody who might be in between positions right now, or maybe, has certainly gone through it in the past, I'm sure, and probably will go through it again. What advice would you have for them, under the umbrella of get back up, but that might be a little bit more something that they could grab onto and just to help them navigate and based on your experience of successfully getting through these patches where some things lined up perfectly and some things didn't?
Yeah. I think, the most important thing to me is, set that goal, right? And do what you have to do to get there, right? Understand, okay, I want to be the VP in however long, and okay, what are the skill gaps that I have that are going to prevent me from getting to that spot, right? Go look at LinkedIn for other people that have those same job titles. Like, what do they have in their LinkedIn profiles that you don't in yours, right? Who are the network connections you might have that you don't, right? Try and work on that. Try and work on those skills. Wherever you have to go, there's plenty of online resources that you can use. There might be something at your current company that, they might be willing to allow you to get access to. Whatever it might be, some kind of educational resource. But whatever it takes to try and fill those gaps and, polish up your resume to a place where it is where you want to get to, right? That personally was a big challenge for me. I spent a lot of time just on the words that my LinkedIn profile says and what's on my resume. Like, okay, there's this chunk of things that I did at a job 10 years ago. All right, well, how's that going to fly with a robot that's reading a resume that's going to kick you out because it doesn't find the 7 keywords that it needs?
Right.
Like you got to be meticulous and you got to take the time. And if it suits you or you have the funds, spend some money on it, right? Because there's firms out there that can do that. So I think to me it's be meticulous, right? You set the goal and then find out what you need to do to achieve that goal, and then whatever's in between, there might be, it's like anything else. You break that thing down into little small chunks, and then it becomes a little more attainable. And, obviously it's like when I look at my journey, it was, there was a couple setbacks, just interpersonal things that, we just didn't get along with the boss or whatever it might be. Figure out what's wrong with you, because maybe there's something in the mirror that you can try and fix. Maybe it's not the boss who's the pain in the ass, right? So
right. You didn't get it along with the boss. Maybe there's 2 sides to that story.
Exactly. Right. And so what do? You can't control that other person, right? But you can control what you're doing. So, and I sound like a football player, but like, that's a really important thing, like, I think that's, you make good choices in your life and you control what you control, then you're on a good path.
Yep. 100%. Love it. Fantastic advice. And, the reason I ask about the different world when you're in between a roles or you're trying to find the next step or you're not 100% sure what the next thing is. I love how you broke it down simply. Just set a goal. Right? It doesn't have to be anything complex. It doesn't have to be I need to land a VP job. It just needs to be something that you can break down and then systematically move towards. And the fascinating thing is that we do this all the time in our professional lives inside of companies. And then when, you go through, I've been through, droughts in my career various times when I left companies and didn't have another job lined up. And it is like the whole world changes. And the reality is it shouldn't change that much. Your focus changes. But I love how you brought it back to just the simple things that just set a goal and then break it down and march towards it. Because then you can really be in any environment and be successful as long as you're doing that.
Exactly. Football, business, whatever it is.
Football, business, right? Mergers and acquisitions.
Oh boy, yes.
There's a lot of goals.
Things to break down in those things, but
a lot of goals and a lot of things to break down. Absolutely, 100%. All right, so one last topic I wanted to circle back to that you mentioned in the beginning. You guys are going through a re-platform. And when you go through a re-platform, having been part of varying iterations of these over the years, I know there's an awful lot of, things that have to change, both on the customer side, as well as on the team side, as well as on the company side. And we'd love to hear your perspective as you think about this current re-platform that is on the immediate horizon for you and your team and the Midaxo company as a whole. And from a leadership perspective, what do you really have to keep front of mind going through this big shift on something that's been around for a decade?
There's a lot there. So let me unpack. So there's the customer base. That's my main focus, is our customers, right? And they've been on this platform, like you said, for a decade. And some of them helped build it, right? And nice. They know what they know, they like what they like, and they are entrenched in their day-to-day. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to come at them with this brand new thing, which, it's going to do the same stuff, but, the buttons are going to be in different places, and it's going to be faster, and it's going to do more stuff. But we're going to take the time, pump the brakes, and help you learn how to do that. And no one wants to hear that, right? People hate change, right? So change management is a massive, massive thing that is the top of mind thing for me right now. And there's a lot of stuff there that goes into that change management that I don't have control over, right? I've got my team of 8 CSMs who are out there all day long on the phone talking to customers and prepping them for this big change that's going to come later this year. But then I got some guys internally who are working on making it real easy to press a button and go zip, 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 right? Like, okay, Mr. Customer, you're scheduled to go on next Thursday, so you're going to shut down your platform Wednesday night, wake up Thursday morning, and be good to go, right?
Okay.
But that's a challenge because there's a million working pieces under the covers there that have to happen, and they have to happen right. And the team that's in charge of doing that is not as business focused, right? They're like coders that want to make their code perfect, and I totally understand that because I was one.
You literally were there. Yeah.
But I also have a goal to hit because we've got customers that need to be moved. And so the challenge internally with those guys is to make sure that they understand that we're on a schedule here, guys, and we can't wait. Mm-hmm. That's another challenge. And then there's the marketing piece, which, we're rebranding everything and it's brand new. So I'm working with those folks to make sure that the messaging that goes to our customer base is right. So there's all kinds of different moving parts that
So how do you keep all these together? Because that's a lot of different areas, a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different people, a lot of different groups, a lot of different responsibilities. How do you, as VP, keep all that stuff in context so that you're talking in the right way to the right group at the right time? What do you think about?
Notebooks. There's a lot of information that I write down right here all day long, and my calendar, right? Like it's all about I know that I've got a weekly meeting with that migration group that, stuff changes on my team. I have my one-on-one meetings with those 8 CSMs. So there's most of my week, right? Plus meetings with those other departments that happen. And a lot of stuff bubbles up in those one-on-one meetings that then I write down in my notebook or put down in a space like Jira or somewhere. And it's not just me, it's the team that we're tracking all this stuff that needs to get tracked, right, for migrations to occur correctly. And so we're keeping a nice long list. And then every week we go and meet the migration team and we groom that list. Like, okay, here's the things that need to get done. So it's really tight. And if you don't keep your head around it, you don't manage it and pay attention to it every single day, it's real easy to get far, far behind. Yeah, because then you're like, wait a minute, it's like you take a day off work and it's like your email goes like this, right? It's the same thing with this stuff, right?
Chaos.
And you got to put somebody in charge of, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be at that meeting, so I need you to take good notes. And then I need you to write those notes in a place where we can all track them, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a little too tactical there, but for me, that's, it's interactions with all kinds of, and for me, customer success sits at the middle of any company, right?
Yes.
We work with sales, we work with finance, we work with product, we work with the leadership team, we work with everybody. So it is not easy to manage all of it. And, I've got people too. Here's another thing just popped in my brain, like good, strong CSMs that are good at their time management and are good at keeping their good notes and are good at bubbling stuff up when it needs to. And if you don't hire those right people, then you're behind the 8 ball too. So there's another tip. Yeah. Don't mess up the hiring part.
Don't mess up the hiring part. We could spend hours talking about that, but we won't go down that path today. Maybe a future time. All right, Craig. So last question here. If you could go travel back in time, but know everything that you know today, all the experiences you've had, the ups, the downs, the sideways, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you could sit down with your younger self at that time when you were hiring your first team member at the company where you became VP, what advice would you share with your younger self?
I've been thinking about this question a lot because I've watched some of the other episodes, and I think my biggest thing would be patience is a virtue, right? Because, it's going to come. It might not come how you expect it to, but it will be there. And just keep, like I said, get back up and it'll happen because you know that you're doing the right things, right? I mean, you're going to make some mistakes. There's going to be some, like you said, some twists and turns that you don't expect. But if you stay patient and you don't get ahead of yourself and start doing things that aren't in line with the goals that you set, then I think you're in great shape. So that would be my thing. Patience is a virtue.
Love it. Wonderful advice. Well, Craig, thank you so much for sharing some time with me today and this audience, sharing your experience and going from, software engineer to VP to senior director to VP and all around. It's just fascinating to know how you got to where you are today. So thank you so much for sharing your hard-earned wisdom and experience and advice with me and this audience.
I appreciate the time. Thanks for having me, Nils. And who knows what's going to happen in the future, but
that's it. But we'll get back up. We'll get back up, right?
Right.
No matter what it is, we'll get back up. All right. Awesome, Craig. Well, take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Nils. Have a good one.